Good day, Kavibal, and welcome to our YouTube webinar series. For the discussion today, the topic will be on hybrid and blended learning in higher education institutions, building resilience into education systems. Before we begin, take note of the following reminders. Make sure you are registered to the webinar to have your e-certificate of participation. Visit certificate.vibalgroup.com or your eturo.org accounts to generate your proof of attendance. Place your questions in the comment box allotted during the session and they will be addressed by our speaker later on. Share the video using hashtag LearnAs1PH as our official hashtag to all our Vibal webinars. Experience learning, ka-Vibal! And now, to proceed with our webinar this afternoon, it is my pleasure to introduce to you our distinguished speaker today. Ms. Maria Joy Samarista Cruz is an Associate Professor 5 from Centro Occidental Polanyi, Albay. She finished her Doctor of Philosophy and Education major in Educational Management at the University of Perpetual Help System, Dalta, Las Piñas. At present, she is a permanent faculty of Polanyi Community College designated as Program Head of Bachelor of Technology and Livelihood Education. She used to serve as a public school master teacher in CAA National High School Annex in Las Piñas and was designated as TLE Department Coordinator from August 1995 to July 2019. During her service in the Division of Las Piñas, she was awarded as one of the finalists in Gawad Sikay, a search for outstanding teacher program, and Division Demo Teacher. She used to be a team leader of Continuous Improvement Plan or CIP in CAA National High School Annex. She is a regular member of Technical Working Group Committee of Activities in the Division of Las Piñas, a member of International Federation for Home Economics, Secretary of the Council of Deans in Region 5, member of Philippine Association for Teachers and Teachers and Educators, and a member of Regional Quality Assessment Team in Region 5. Awarded as Outstanding Global Leader Rank 1 in 3rd Beyond Books and Publication International Multidisciplinary Research Conference, International Leadership Summit on Innovation and Emerging Paradigm Demonstration Teaching Festivals, and Global and Educators Awards last March 25, 2022. As a researcher, she presented her paper and awarded as Best in Research Abstract in 2021 for International Conference on Technology, Language, Education, and Culture and Global Leaders and Educators Awards Demonstration Teaching, sponsored by Beyond Books and Publication last December 9 to 12, 2021. She published her paper in International Journal of Advanced Multidisciplinary Studies, IGEMS Volume 1, Issue 4. She's an international plenary speaker on dynamic, resilient educator leader. Aside from being an educator, she's also an entrepreneur, owner of a restaurant and other food outlets that help working students and unemployed individuals that possess skills needed in her business. She's a person with care and compassion in the community. At present, she is a member of Community Development Advocates of Centro Occidental Polanyi Albay, Secretary of Sisters St. Peter and Paul Parish for Lectors and Commentators, or LECCOM, Vice President-elect of Kiwanis Club Polanyi Movers International that provide care and assistance to children. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome our dear speaker, Dr. Maria Joy Samarista Cruz.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. It is an honor for me to be a part of this webinar of VIBAL. And today I'm going to share my topic on hybrid and blended learning in higher education institutions, building resilience into education system. After the presentation, I am expecting that my audience gain insights on the learning modalities in higher education institutions, building resiliency. For you to be able to discuss the learning modalities in higher education institutions this time of pandemic, appreciate the positive impact of the learning modalities in higher education institutions, and apply hybrid and blended learning approach towards resiliency in education. Can I share my screen?
Yes po.
Okay. So COVID-19 pandemic posed challenges to all of us. But as educator, we should not stop teaching our learners regardless of the locations or situations. XEIs, or higher education institutions, does not only refer to universities and colleges. It also includes several professional schools that offers trainings and subjects like law, theology, business, music, and arts. It also includes in higher education, teacher training institution, junior colleges, and institutes of technology. The higher education institution adopted different learning modalities this time of pandemic in order to support the learning needs, like the hybrid or the blended learning process, also known as hybrid learning. This is an approach to education that combines the online educational materials and opportunities for interaction online with traditional place-based classroom methods. Okay. So blended learning, this is a hybrid learning. This is an approach to education that combines the online educational materials and opportunities for interaction online with traditional classroom-based method. It requires the physical presence of both teachers and students with some elements of student control over time, place, path, or pace. Okay. We also considered blended learning as a combination of a face-to-face forms of instruction and online modes of learning, drawing on technology-mediated education, where all participants in the learning process are sometimes separated by distance. So technology is very important in this kind of learning. Sometimes, blended learning is mentioned alongside with a personalized learning and differentiated education. This time of pandemic, unprecedented disturbances in people's lives occurred unexpectedly. So we suffer a lot. So many difficulties were experienced by nearly all of us, affecting our health, finances, education, and nearly every aspect of our life. That's why the Commission on Higher Education, or CHED, issued Memorandum Number 4, Series of 2020, or the guidelines on the implementation of flexible learning. Now, the purpose of this CMO, or CHED Memorandum Order Number 4, Series of 2020, is to guide the institutions of higher educations in the adoption of flexible learning, comprising the hybrid and blended learning. When we say flexible learning, there is a traditional classroom-based and the use of technology as mode of learning delivery. Now, the CMO number 4, Series of 2020, or the guidelines on the implementation of flexible learning, is in accordance with Republic Act number 7722. Okay. Now, this Republic Act number 7722, or known also as the Higher Education Act of 1994, creating the Commission on Higher Education, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes. And of course, Republic Act number 11469 or the Bayanihan to Heal as One Act. This is the law in the Philippines that was enacted during pandemic. Last was on March 2020, granting the President an additional authority to combat the COVID-19 pandemic in the Philippines. CMO number 4 is also in accordance with Commission and Bank Resolution number 4120202 series of 2020. In higher education institutions, we are implementing and adopting the blended learning models. These are the following. We have the face-to-face driver. Now, the face-to-face driver, this is the kind of modality that we implement during this time of pandemic in which the teacher drives education in digital tools to supplement the needs of the learners. And we have the second one, the so-called rotation. So there is a rotation, alternate of students, online students study, and in-person classroom time. Or sometimes we can call this as flipped classroom, wherein the teacher can give the discussion online first, and the students can have their freedom to learn using the digital or the technology. And in the next day, the teacher and the students needs to meet in order to discuss the lessons given before the face-to-face interaction. Then we have the third one, the so-called flexible learning. When we say flexible learning, this is the platform or the learners can learn through interaction, face-to-face interaction also with the teacher and with the use of the technology. In higher education institution, we have the so-called synchronous and asynchronous interaction. Okay, so when we say synchronous, this is the online learning modality in which the teacher and then the learners can interact and can give their discussions online. While the asynchronous, the teacher can give the instructions to the learners through digital platforms like the Google Classroom, and then the students have their own pace when they want to read and study the lesson and submit the outputs to their teacher. The majority of the curriculum is provided via a digital form in this kind of blended learning model. Teachers are available for consultation and support in person. That's why the teacher, especially during the pandemic, they need to provide their contacts to their students for easy communication, so that if the students have some questions to be asked or some clarifications regarding the lesson, they can easily communicate and contact their teachers. And then we have the fourth one, we have the labs. The intercurriculum is offered digitally, but in a centralized physical location. In this paradigm, students typically take traditional coursework as well. Students elect to supplement their traditional education with online coursework. And we have the next one, we have the online driver, in which the student finishes an entire course via an online platform with the possibility of instructor checks. All contents instruction is supplied digitally, and face-to-face meetings are organized or made available as needed, like the e-courses offered by TESDA and offered by some institutions or open universities. Now, in order to properly address the needs of learners, the institutions must keep in mind that the implementations of program, courses, and learning intervention is tailored to meet the individual needs of learners in terms of location, pace, method, and outcomes. So we need to consider here as educators, we need to consider here the diversity of our learners and their learning needs. Teachers are curriculum leaders and instructional leaders as well. When we say leadership, it refers to the role you play in helping enable your school and community achieve their goal. Okay? And when we say curriculum, this is simply defined as the content, standards, and competencies and topics that a student learns. And the instruction, this is defined as the means for implementing the curriculum. It includes the instructional strategies, methods, approaches, and techniques. And in blended learning, we need to consider the curriculum and the instruction to be employed. A curriculum leader provides academic leadership and management by supervising and organizing the curriculum, staff, budget, and resources within their department. And this is very important during the blended learning approach. The leader, the administrator must be a curriculum leader. And they should also be an instructional leader in which this is a model of school leadership in which a principal works alongside teachers to provide support and guidance in establishing best practices in teaching. The main reason why teacher and school exist is to teach learners enhance their knowledge and skills. Teachers must be a curriculum and instructional leaders. And this aspect is very important in the adoption of blended learning. Here are the standards that teachers should know and do in performing their role as curriculum and instructional leaders, especially for those who are pre-service teachers who are educators. First, you must have the knowledge of various curriculum models and programs that are developmentally appropriate for the learners. So this should be learner-centered. As teacher, you need to be knowledgeable regarding the curriculum and programs that can help enhance your learners. And then we have the knowledge. Teachers must have the knowledge of the different learning areas and subjects. If you can recall the PPST, a teacher must be knowledgeable with the content across or beyond his or her subject. And then we have the pedagogical knowledge. We need to be knowledgeable about this. What are the pedagogy that is most appropriate to employ or to use in the curriculum? And the next one is the utilization of technology for teaching and learning. In education, we have the so-called educational technology, wherein we are using the technology for the utilization or for the construction, creation of instructional materials. Okay, technology is very important nowadays. And there is a certain subject in education, the technology for teaching and learning, in which the professor or the instructors need to teach the learners about the updates or the recent technology that they can apply or employ in the construction of their IMs or instructional materials. And we teachers should be knowledgeable about this. What is instructional materials or IMs? This is the materials, or these are the materials that we utilize to deliver the lesson to our learners. And we have also effective classroom
Good afternoon,
management.
ma'am. Excuse me po. You're currently on ano po, the first slide pa rin po.
Okay, so maybe the internet connection is a little bit slow. What I can see here is the slide that I am using right now.
Ulit na lang po ng share screen, ma'am. Maybe ang naka-share screen pa rin po kasi sa amin is yung kita po yung ibang slides po.
Okay, thank you. Is it visible now?
Ayan, ma'am. Okay na po. Thank you po.
Okay, so thank you very much. So we are now on the standards that teachers should know and do in performing their role as curriculum and instructional leader. As I have mentioned a while ago, teachers should be knowledgeable of various curriculum models and programs that are developmentally appropriate for the learners. They must have the knowledge of the different learning areas and subject. They must be knowledgeable with the pedagogy and utilization of technology for teaching and learning, development of instructional materials, and of course, classroom management. So we teachers, we are jack of all trades, and we can be effective and efficient if we know this role of teacher as curriculum and instructional leaders. The technology is very essential in the teaching learning process. So utilization of technology for teaching and learning is very important. Now we have the so-called EduTech or educational technology. It refers to the use of computer hardware, software, and educational theory and practice to aid learning in the classroom. Educational technology is the process of integrating technology into education in a way that encourages a more diversified learning environment and gives students the opportunity to learn how to use technology in addition to completing their typical assignments. So we have different application or software that we can utilize for the delivery of our lesson. Especially nowadays that the students are adept in the use of technology, we teachers must be more knowledgeable in the use of technology. If not, we are the one who will be left behind in the use or utilization of technology. Okay. Before the implementation of blended learning or hybrid learning, SEIs needs to improve their technology to support learning because we cannot implement or adopt the so-called hybrid learning or blended learning if the school or the institution does not have any internet connection. So internet connection is very important. This is very essential. So even though we are applying or adopting the so-called hybrid learning or blended learning, but then the internet connection is not good, then the learning process is not a good quality one. Okay, so how can we maximize the use of technology to support learning? First, we need to determine the level of technology to be used in the delivery of the program. What are the available technology that we need? We need to have a computer, laptop, cell phones, and we need to have a good internet connection. Second, we need to establish a multimedia or learning resource center to provide technical support to faculty members in the development of IT-enabled and IT-mediated instructional materials. So each institutions, especially the higher education institutions, they must have the so-called technology center or the learning resource center. The learning resource center or LRC This is a center equipped with necessary equipment to facilitate learning or teaching learning process with the aid of the technology. It must have internet connection, computer, overhead projector, a smart TV, and other resources that the faculty members can utilize in the development of their IMs or instructional materials. In the learning resources, the journals or the electronic books must also be available. And of course, the library must have a computer with internet connection to establish a multimedia or learning resource center that can help teachers in the development of their IMs. It is very difficult for teachers to construct or to create the instructional materials without having the necessary technology or resource center in their institution. Nowadays, we have the free internet connection, the DICT. This is a free internet connection provided by the government. In all government or local communities, they provided this kind of internet connection that the teachers as well as the students can utilize. Then we have the access and utilization of electronic library on or available OERs as reference in various flexible learning pedagogies and disciplinary content. So a library must have an internet connection also. So the teachers and the learners must maximize the use of their technology to support their learning and the teaching process. And then we have the Learning Management System or LMS. During pandemic, there are so many seminars, webinars, conferences on how to create, on how to adapt the learning management system to easily facilitate the learning process in every institution, especially in higher education institutions. Now, if we have the technology available in our institutions, we need also to consider the guidelines in the implementation of blended learning. It doesn't mean that this is pandemic, this is the time that we don't have much interaction with our learners. We can easily implement the blended learning or hybrid learning in our institution. We need to consider these guidelines. First, it must be learner-centered. The teacher must provide activities or tasks that can be done by their students. Learner-centered, not teacher-centered. Because learner-centered approach, you are teaching, you are developing the learners holistically. In one way or another, you are developing or honing their skills, even though they are not inside the classroom. So you can have activities, modules that you can utilize in the blended learning. Another guideline in the implementation of the blended learning or hybrid learning in higher education institution is to exercise their judgment in the deployment of available flexible learning and other alternative modes of delivery in lieu of in-campus learning or face-to-face modality. During the early days of pandemic, communities are locked down. There is no interaction between the teachers and the learners. So, the administrators need to think of ways on how to deliver the learning to their students. So we apply the so-called flexible learning or alternative modes of delivery. At first, we utilize the modular approach. Modular approach in which the instructors or the professors need to prepare a module for their specific subjects to be delivered to their students through Google Classroom, email, or messenger. Or sometimes we have the dropping point. We need to bring the modules, the handouts, to the different barangays in order to ensure that the learners who don't have their internet connection can still have access on their learning. They will not be left behind because there is a handout, a hard copy of modules. Although it is very expensive on the part of the institutions, but there's no way. Education must continue. Learning must continue. We should not stop. COVID-19 is not a hindrance. It is not a setback for us as educators. Educators are resourceful. We need to do something. We need to do ways in order to reach our learners, even how difficult it is. Next, SEI should formulate decisions using data-driven and participatory approaches on determining and implementing the most viable form of flexible learning and teaching that will utilize based on their capability, existing condition, national government guidelines, and local government advisories. So higher education institutions they provided webinars on flexible learnings, many webinars that the instructors need to attend during this time of pandemic in order to learn, to capacitate the teachers on the so-called flexible learning. Although flexible learning or blended learning, this is already an approach applied or implemented by other institutions, but not all institutions adopted this kind of learning modality or learning approach. Only this time of pandemic. And we need to follow the national government agency guidelines. If it is lockdown, we're not allowed to go out. So we need to utilize our internet connection. But how many percent of our students have access on internet? How many of our students have their computers at home? So this is very difficult on our part. And we need to follow also the local government advisories. And we are blessed that we are on level 1 already. We have this interaction. 50% of our students can already go and be in school, have the classroom interaction, perform inside the classroom, do their laboratories inside the campus. But still, some are not coming. So we need to provide modules through Google Classroom or Messenger. So these are the modalities that higher education institutions may consider in implementing the hybrid blended learning strategies. We have the first component, the technology. So we have this kind of learning strategies or blended learning strategies. We have the offline or the asynchronous, we have the blended, and we have the online or the synchronous. What are the technology that we need? We need the printed modules for the asynchronous, audio tapes. The teachers need to record their discussions, send in the messenger, send through smartphones, using the messenger, Google Classroom, and the blended learning approach. And we have the LMS. LMS must be set up in the institution, but not all institutions have this LMS or learning management system. So training must be provided. And we have the online or the synchronous. We need the desktop computer, laptop, smartphones, mobile phones, applications, and we have also the learning management system. So these are the technology that we all need in the implementation of the hybrid blended learning strategy. We need technology. Without technology, we cannot implement the so-called blended learning strategy. And we have the second component. We need to consider the content, the learning materials, our learning objectives. So still, for the offline, we need the printed modules, storage devices, materials, bond papers, and we have for the blended, we need printed or electronic module, video, audio, the use of digital platforms, or the higher education institution learning management system also. And we have the online, electronic modules, video, audio, tapes, podcasts, webcasts. Mainly the use of internet-based technology is implemented in this online instruction. So it is not so easy to implement the hybrid or the blended learning strategies. There are so many things that we need to consider. And we have also the third component, which is the evaluation or assessment, both formative and summative assessment. How can we know if the learners are learning? If there's a learning that takes place, we send modules, we send video, we send audio tapes. We are interacting with our students through messengers, Google Meet, Zoom, but how can we assess? So for the offline, we need a non-conventional assessment, performance-based assessment, portfolio. The students need to record their performance in the blended learning. We have the project-based or task-based assessment, use of assessment rubrics, use of adaptive testing. So there are so many authentic types of assessment that we need to adopt in the implementation of the hybrid or blended learning strategy. Then the next component is the support services. We need to consider the support services. How about the library during the hybrid or blended learning? Guidance and counseling, the health and psychological support that the students need, the technical support of faculty. How about the enrollment and the registry? How about the tuition fee and salary? Okay, for the offline, we need to consider other delivery options for student services. We have the digital or non-digital when necessary and appropriate. So during alert level 2, we consider the by appointment visitation of students in the library. And for the blended learning, if 50% program is online, then library must have also online. And they must have subscriptions that the students can access even though they are in the comfort of their home. There must be an online enrollment. Most of the institutions applied or implemented the online enrollment. Guidance and counseling is also online. Online technical support or help desk for the teachers to help them in the construction or in the creation preparations of their instructional materials and modules. Online assessment and grades monitoring is also one thing to consider in providing the blended learning. And also online payment of the salary and tuition fee. So these are the things that we need to consider. modalities that higher educations may consider, not only higher education institution, but basic education institution can also adopt. Then we have the policies, intellectual property rights, especially for the researches, open educational resources, plagiarism, student attendance, reporting and updating, teaching complement, attendance, reporting and updating. They must be all available in offline, blended, and online. For the blended, this must be available in printed and electronic copy, while in the online, this must be available in electronic copy. Same with the overview and orientation guide. So hybrid and blended learning has the advantages. First, hybrid or blended learning facilitate a simultaneous, independent, and collaborative learning experience. The learners learn to work and study on their own. And at the same time, they can get support from their parents. While studying at home, their parents can help them to answer, to prepare outputs or their assignments. So there is a facilitation of a simultaneous, independent, and collaborative learning experiences for all the students. And then we have the students, they can work on their own with new concept, which frees teachers up to circulate and support individual students who may need individualized attention. So the teachers can just give activities for their learners. And the teachers can give their attention to those learners who really need support from them. Then the use of information and communication technologies have been found to improve student attitudes towards learning. Because if the learners will not use or integrate ICT or information and communication technologies in their learning, then they will be left behind. The teachers needs to utilize also ICT, integrate ICT in the delivery of their lesson. Hybrid or blended learning has the potential to reduce educational expenses. Although some dispute that blended learning is inherently less expensive than traditional classroom learning. In what way can it reduce the educational expenses? The students don't need to go to their school. They need to go to their library. They can stay in their home while studying. And they don't have to buy expensive books because the materials are all available online, or the hard copy provided by the institutions. That's why it is considered as thrifty. You can save in this mode of learning modality. By incorporating information technology into class project, communication between lecturers and part-time students has improved. So the teacher and the student can still communicate through online using Google Meet, Messenger, Zoom, and students were able to better evaluate their understanding of course material via the use of computer-based qualitative and quantitative assessment modules. So that is another advantages of hybrid blended learning. Next advantage is students with special talents or interests outside of the available curricula use educational technology to advance their skills or exceed grade restrictions. So they have their freedom to advance their skills utilizing the technology. They can record their performance and they can send it to their instructors or teachers via the digital technology or educational technology. If there are some advantages, there are also challenges in hybrid or blended learning. What are the challenges in hybrid or blended learning? In blended learning, we need to integrate technical tools or information communication technology. Now, what is the challenge of this? The tools or the technology tools that are available in our institutions needs to be reliable, user-friendly, and up-to-date. So those institutions who don't have an up-to-date or updated technology, then they cannot implement well the so-called hybrid or blended learning. Next, there is no guarantee that the students will have access to the tools that they need to learn on the computer. Not 100% of students can access internet or the tools that they need to learn on the computer. Some of the students don't have their technology know-how. They don't have basic computer knowledge. So that is another challenge, especially for us educators. How can we reach out those students to access the tools or the materials that we provided via internet in the Gmail, Messenger, or Google Classroom? What they have is the smartphones. Some of their smartphones are not updated or low technology. And there's an unreliable internet connectivity. That's why we need to survey first how many of our students have a strong internet connectivity. How many of our students don't have internet connectivity? How many of our students have their computers at home or laptops? How many don't have? And the internet connectivity, is it intermittent, especially those in the upland area? So this is another challenge in the implementation of hybrid or blended learning approach. And of course, IT literacy. This is a challenge, especially for seasoned teachers. There are some seasoned teachers who are not adept in the use of technology. They are more on traditional way of the delivery of their lesson. They don't know how to use the computer. They don't know how to send their materials, instructional materials in the Gmail, how to use the Google Classroom. So the institutions need to provide webinars, computer education or technology literacy or IT literacy for students and teachers. So excellent blended learning program are facilitating student learning, communicating ideas effectively, demonstrating an interest in learning, organizing effectively, showing respect for students, and assessing progress fairly. Okay? We can say that from the Chinese proverb, learning is a treasure that will follow its owner everywhere. Now, if we're going to think of this proverb, Chinese proverb, we can say that education is the best gift a person can give herself or others. And the pandemic that we are experiencing right now is not a setback for us. This is not a hindrance for us to stop learning, but rather take this as a means to develop resilience in the educational system by obligating government agencies concerned with learners' education to consider other learning modalities. So, blended learning implementation of blended learning, it helped us, higher education institutions, to be more resilient, to be more adaptable to change. If we cannot cope up with changes, then there will be no progress. So I hope that you learn in this session, and thank you very much for listening. These are my references. Okay, thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Doc, for that wonderful sharing. Thank you very much to all our viewers. Now, if you have any questions for our speaker, you may type it in our chat box so that our speaker can address them for you. All right, so we're going to give a few minutes for our viewers to type in their questions if they have. But for the meantime, do you have any last reminders for our viewers today po, ma'am? Again, Dr. Joy, do you have any last reminders for our viewers today po?
Thank you very much, everyone, for attending this session, and I hope that you can apply the hybrid or the blended learning modalities in your institution, and for you educators to be more resilient and adaptable to change. Because we teachers, we are fighters. We should not stop from learning, and this COVID-19 pandemic is not a setback for all of us.
Thank you very much po, Doc. I think our viewers doesn't have any questions. All they have are, we have our thank you messages for you po. Ayan, our teachers really feel thankful sa inyong naging discussion po this afternoon. Again, thank you very much po, Dr. Joy. There we have it in behalf of Vibal Group Incorporated. Again, I would like to thank our speaker for today for this indeed very eye-opening and timely learning session. It is an honor to have you with us today, ma'am. And to all our Kavibal viewers, all thanks to you for your continuous patronage to our daily learning session. Don't forget to register to get your e-certificate of participation. We also encourage you to subscribe and watch on our official Vival Facebook and YouTube channel. Muli, maraming salamat at magandang araw sa ating lahat. Stay safe po mga kabibal. Stay safe po, Dr. Joy.
Very much. Stay safe, everyone. And thank you for listening and being patient in this discussion or session.